And I guess, when we talk about watching children, the one maybe note that you may not know about me, and probably is maybe the thing that is most important for you to know, is that my wife is a saint, and we have 10 children. See, it always gets that little, oh, wow, you could say I walked on the moon, nothing, 10 children, whoa, okay, that's something. But I've been very blessed, and just to give you an example of play, my son James, sometimes you get these special moments in life, you're very blessed to just be there at that second. And literally, it's a second. It would have passed. I would have missed it. But James was trying to learn how to ride a bicycle for the first time. And I have 10 children, so I'm not just looking at one of them. There's balls coming at me. There's people, look at this, Dad, look at that. I'm in the trees, I'm in bushes, I'm throwing balls. And I was trying to teach James to ride a bicycle, and he was struggling along and had his feet on the ground and so forth. And somebody called me, and I talked to him. And when I turned back, this was the blessing. At that second, he put his feet on both pedals, and he started to pedal, but here's what it was. His face. I never witnessed such joy in somebody's face as that moment. He was unaware of me completely. He was completely absorbed in what he was doing, but I got to see the second that he recognized that he was balancing and he was actually riding, and I never saw, the joy actually kind of physically came out of him and almost hit me. It was really just remarkable, but that's play. That's what we look for. And now you might think, well, it's just children that play. But I'll give you one example. I had a friend, I'll just tell you his first name was Luke. And when we were up at Boston University, this guy loved to play. He was a football player. He did every kind of sport, but he just loved to play all the time. And one day I look out the window of my dorm room down on the football field that's outside the dorm area. There's not a soul on the field except for Luke. He is running up and down the field, kicking and throwing a football by himself. So he cranks back and he throws the ball like 50 yards. And then he runs down the field and he gets the ball. Then he comes back and he punts it down the field and he runs after it and he comes back. And I stood there just watching him thinking, if anybody saw him doing this, they'd think he's actually insane. And yet, he was playing. He was completely absorbed. He was having the greatest time in the world all by himself, running and kicking up and down that field. So this thing of play is something that we've all seen, whether it's your own children, your grandparents, or even just remember yourself when you were growing up and playing. But I guess the point I want to make about play is how long it's been around and how much it's actually a part of our lives. Again, I haven't seen the artifacts to prove this, the cave paintings and so forth, but it's suggested that sport's earliest practice may be as old as 25,000 years old. If you look at the team ball games, which are very similar to team ball games that we have today, the native Indian cultures of the New World began as early as 4000 BC. I know we're going to get to contemporary. I'm already in 4000 BC. I'm going to get there any minute. And they were typically played in association with religious ceremonies. Track and field activities of the Proto-Celtic Europeans were embodied principally in the Celtian games of Ireland, and these games contested maybe as early as 3000 BC. Another track and field activities of the Proto-Greek Europeans were also first associated with religious activities, and they were contested maybe as early as 1800 BC. And then they really were the precursors of the Olympic Games, which began, believe it or not, in 776 BC. That's when the Olympics started. And in classic literature, again, we think of play as sometimes being trivial. Maybe it's not important. Maybe we shouldn't waste our time. And we're told very quickly to grow up as kids. You got to get serious. You got to start working. But in classical literature, we find many references to sport. Matter of fact, sport and play were essential to the education and formation of youth. And I guess what I'm going to do with you here is many who have contributed to the best that can be thought and said have written about the importance of sport and its place in our world. The first I'm just going to share with you, and again, I'm just giving little bits and snippets here, but I'll move us along pretty quickly. But I also did this in somewhat of a timeline, just so you get a sense of the continuity of how important play has been in our human condition. Socrates, 470 to 399 BC, Xenophon, writing about him, said, "To have the body active and healthy can be hurtful to you in no occasions. And since we cannot do anything without the body, it is certain that a good constitution will be of great advantage to us in all our undertakings. And indeed, it is shameful for a man to grow old before he has tried his own strength, and seen to what degree of dexterity of perfection he can attain, which he can never know if he give himself over for useless, because dexterity and strength come not by themselves or of themselves, but by practice and exercise." Plato, Socrates, Plato, they're all talking about play. Plato, 428 to 348 BC, "For he who changes the sports is secretly changing the manners of the young." Wow, that is really a profound statement that was made a long time ago. For he who changes the sports is secretly changing the manners of the young and making the old to be dishonored among them and the new to be honored. That's really important because there's a lot going on in sport today, and it has a tremendous influence, and obviously Plato was aware of that. And by the way, I'm giving you snippets. They wrote pretty significantly about the place of exercise and sport in our lives. Aristotle, 384 to 322 BC. And as in the Olympic Games, it is not the most beautiful and the strongest that are crowned, but those who compete. So those who act, we talked about acting with the bishop, those who act and rightly win the noble and good things in life. He also wrote one other thing I just pulled out was, it is plain that boys should be first put under the care of the different masters of the gymnastics arts, both to form their bodies and teach them their exercises. Cicero, 106 BC to 43 BC. Is virtue itself sufficient to make life happy? A resounding yes from him, but certainly sport without virtue would be a resounding no. St. Paul, who we're all familiar with, I assume, 2 to 68 AD. I'll just give you two scriptural quotes here. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own? For you have been purchased at a price, therefore glorify God in your body. That is 1 Corinthians 6:19 to 20. The second is 1 Corinthians 9:24 to 27, and it's, do you not know that all the runners in the stadium all run in the race, but only one wins the prize? Run so as to win. Every athlete exercises discipline in every way. They do it to win a perishable crown, but we an imperishable one. Thus I do not run aimlessly. I do not fight as if I were shadowboxing. No, I drive my body and I train it, for fear that after having preached to others, I myself should be disqualified. And Paul, as you may know, was from Tarsus. There was actually a stadium in his town. There was a gymnasium in his town as well. And so he was very familiar with the sport culture, and that's why I think he used that example to relate to those of people at that time. St. Irenaeus, 130 to 202. The commingling and union of body and soul constitutes the perfect man. St. Athanasius describes St. Anthony of the Desert as Christ's athlete. St. Augustine, as a boy I played ball games. I won't read the whole thing, but I thought that's interesting. St. Augustine's playing ball games. Okay, I was disobedient not because I had chosen the higher things, but from love of sport. In competitive games, I loved the pride of winning. I liked to tickle my ears with false stories, which further titillated my desires. That's from the Confessions. During St. Augustine's lifetime, the Olympic Games were discontinued in 393 or 394 AD. The Christian Emperor Theodosius disapproved of the corrupt practices and professionalism which had begun to creep or dominate the sport of the time. And then St. Benedict, as I'm coming from St. Benedict's place, 480 to 547 AD, responded to the widespread corruption by leaving Rome and founding what we know today as the Order of St. Benedict. And he did that in a really an amazing way, creating the Rule of St. Benedict. And one of the parts of the rule says, our hearts and our bodies must, therefore, be ready to do battle under the biddings of holy obedience. And let us ask the Lord that he supply by help of his grace what is impossible to us by nature. St. Thomas Aquinas, 1224 to 1274 AD. He subscribed to Aristotle's notion that, quote, to a good bodily constitution corresponds the nobility of the soul. St. Francis de Sales, a lot of Catholics going on here. St. Francis de Sales, 1567 to 1622 AD. So again, games of skill, which exercise and strengthen body or mind, such as tennis, rackets, running at the ring, chess, and the like, are in themselves both lawful and good. Only one must avoid excess, either in the time given to them or the amount of the interest they absorb. For if too much time be given to such things, they cease to be recreation and become an occupation. It's an important thought, because I think that's part of the problem today. And so far from resting and restoring mind or body, they have precisely the contrary effect.